Dragonflight Season 2 brings new changes to Mythic Plus. Existing affixes have received some changes, 3 new affixes have been added to the game, and the key level at which these affixes are now applied has changed as well, from the previously 2, 4, and 7 to Keystone level 2, 7, and 14. In addition to this, the seasonal Mythic Plus affix has been completely removed. The end of dungeon item level starts at 402 for Keystone level 2 and ends at 431 for Keystone level 20. Equivalently, the Great Vault rewards start at 415 for a Keystone level 2 and end at item level 447 for a Keystone level 20. Dragonflight Season 2 will have a brand new Affix Rotation. It is currently unknown and has not been published by Blizzard Entertainment. We are made aware of it every single week as the patch unfolds. And at the start of each week on this channel, we will make videos giving you tips, tricks, macros, and small guides that you can use for the entire of that week in order to dominate your keys. This week's Mythic Plus affixes are Fortified, Entangling, and Bolstering. And in this video, we will cover tips, tricks, macros, and a bunch of useful information that you can use in order to perform at your best in the upcoming keys that you will run this week. The number one biggest tip I have for Fortified Wicks The number one biggest tip that I have for Fortified weeks has to do with cooldowns. Many DPS are hesitant to use their offensive cooldowns because they're waiting for either a big pull or they want to perform very well on a boss pull. If you do not use your offensive cooldowns regularly, your tanks are going to run out of their defensive cooldowns, which can lead to a wipe, or it can lead to a smaller pull, which is inefficient for overall dungeon time. Not to mention the fact that if you actually wipe, that is overall detrimental for the group and for that key. A bonus tip that I have for Fortified weeks has to do with crowd control. Make sure you track AoE stops, interrupts, stuns, silences, disorients, knockbacks, etc. And you are not very trigger happy to use them instantly when your tank does a big pull. The reason for this is because you will make the mobs immune to CC. If this happens very early, as some of the other affixes are going to kick in, your tank and group as a whole will take a lot of damage. And you want to prevent that as much as possible. So use your AoE CC sparingly and make sure you keep track of everybody else in the group. Bolstering has received a massive change. It has gone from increasing the mob's HP and damage to just increasing the mob's damage. As a consequence, make sure you use proper nameplate tracking of NPC buffs. And when you see a mob with high stacks of bolstering, you can use abilities such as Ring of Peace, Imprison, Paralyze, Death Grip, Chains of Ice in order to help your tank kite those mobs. In some situations, you can even taunt and use a major defensive ability in order to help your tank. And if you are in an organized group, you can make call out to focus down that one specific mob. Entangling is a brand new affix, and what it does is it periodically spawns a plant underneath players while in combat. The plant will have a circle around it, and while inside that circle, you will be slowed by 30%. You have 8 seconds to move away from the plant. If you fail to do so, you will be stunned for 3 seconds. But there are many tools to work around this, minimize your movement, and maximize your DPS as well as your survivability. So here are some great utility tools that you can use in your Mythic Plus keys during Entangling weeks. Any Paladin can spec into Blessing of Freedom and also pair it up with the talent Unbound Freedom in order to make themselves as well as another party member immune to the slow and also prevent the stun. Here is a very simple mouse over macro that you can use, especially when you pug. And if you are in an organized group, here is a specific target macro that you can use Just make sure you fill in the name of your specific teammate or friend. Using abilities such as Blessing of Protection or the Protection Paladin's Blessing of Spell Warding is not the best use of those abilities because they have a very long cooldown. It is far better to be used during crucial boss fight mechanics or to prevent certain deaths during big trash pulls. Every single monk has access to the Tiger Lust talent, and if you use it at the right time, it's going to make you immune to the slow, and it's also going to prevent the stun at the end. Here is a self-cast macro that you can use on yourself, as well as a mouse over macro that you can use on any teammate in order to help them deal with this affix much easier. Something that can be very useful is picking 2 stacks of your roll. And as a tank, what you can do is hold down S key while rolling. Make sure you roll with your back away from the mobs, which is a common mistake that tanks do when they roll through mobs and they get hit and can potentially get one shot. Both Demon Hunter specs can take Vengeful Retreat, which is a very short cooldown, and it will always be up when you need it for Entangling. Just make sure you don't Vengeful Retreat and Ninja Pull. The best tip that I have for Demon Hunters is not to use I-Beam or Fell Devastation during Entangling, because if you mistime it, you will still be in the circle area of effect, you won't have enough time to react, and you can potentially get stunned. As Vengeance, I would highly suggest that you do not use your leap to get out of it, but instead spec into Vengeful Retreat. Use your leap to help you gain aggro on mobs, as well as close the gap when moving from different mechanics or pulling multiple trash packs. All the Death Knight specs have access to both Anti-Magic Shell as well as Icebound Fortitude, and additional talents that can further reduce the cooldown on Icebound Fortitude by 60 seconds. The reason why these 2 abilities are very strong is because if they're used at the right time, they can prevent the stun. Anti-Magic Shell is going to prevent the application of harmful magic effects, which is what the stun at the end of Entangling is considered. And Icebound Fortitude is going to cleanse stuns as well as make you immune to any additional stuns for its duration. Warriors can use their Heroic Leap in order to leap out of Entangling's area of effect. And you can also spec into Intervene in order to run at high speed towards a member that is outside Entangling. I wouldn't recommend specking into Intervene as it is not a baseline spell that it is used by any of the 3 specs, and playing with it can be a little bit awkward. Here's a macro that you can use if you opt to spec into Intervene. I will recommend that you spec into the reduced cooldown of Heroic Leap with the extra movement speed, as it is going to make your life that much easier. You can also avatar when Entangling is cast because it will remove the slow effect. All specs of Druid will take the talent Moonkin form, and if you are either Resto or one of the 2 DPS specs, you can shapeshift into Moonkin and disengage away from Entangling while still maximizing your DPS. And if you are caught during a hard cast of a spell, you can use the macro on the screen now in order to make sure you do not miss your Wild Charge cast. When Druids shift in and out of forms, they remove all snares on them. However, as a bear, that's not really an option, especially when face tanking mobs or a boss. And since Entangling only happens during combat, one of the best tools that you can use is Improved Stampeding Roar, making this movement speed increasing effect be available every minute. So you should have it every other Entangling in order to counteract the slow and have enough time to move out of the area of effect, preventing the stun. Every rogue has access to Cloak of Shadows as well as Shadow Step. However, I wouldn't recommend using Cloak of Shadows because it's a decently long cooldown and it's such a powerful defensive ability that is going to save your life and potentially prevent you from proccing cheat death that I believe you should use in specific scenarios, not to prevent an affix. But you can use this macro on the screen here in order to shadow step to a party member that is outside of the entangling area of effect. And if you are outlaw, you can spec into grappling hook. And if you time it properly, you can maximize your DPS and still get out on time. All Shaman specs have access to Wind Rush Totem as well as Spirit Walker's Grace. And the first talent is going to increase your movement speed by by 40%, counteracting the slow effect from Entangling, giving you enough time to move out and prevent the stun. While Spirit Walker's Grace is going to allow you to cast while moving, being very efficient for restoration as well as elemental to not have downtime while DPSing, and dealing with the affix at the same time. Just like the Boomkin's Wild Charge and the Demon Hunter's Vengeful Retreat, hunters can disengage out of every single entangling. Just make sure you know exactly where you're disengaging towards so you do not accidentally ninja pull. And if you are hard casting any spell, you can use this macro on the screen here. Make sure you time your disengage correctly and prevent the stun. All mage specs have access to both Shimmer as well as Ice Flows. Shimmer is going to allow you to blink while casting, making sure you have zero downtime on your DPS. And Ice Flows is going to allow you to move while casting, which is great, especially when you're hard casting Pyroblast and you want to deal with the Entangling affix while not losing a second of DPS. Warlock is my least played class, and I don't have that much depth into it. The only tool that I would recommend would be Burning Rush, simply because it doesn't allow you to be reduced below 100% movement speed. So if Entangling is cast on you, pressing Burning Rush is going to make you immune to the slow and also give you enough time to get out before the stun. Priests also deal with Entangling pretty well. If you're spec'd into movement speed increase on your Power Word Shield, you can press that in order to get out. If you're spec'd into Angelic Feather, you can use a macro like the one you see on the screen right here in order to target the right person with an Angelic Feather in order to give them enough movement speed to help them get out. And if you are spec'd into Leap of Faith, I would highly recommend you do not grip classes that can very easily charge or Fel Rush right in and get stunned. Instead, Leap of Faith another ranged player or somebody that is very slow to react. If you do play as a healer, I would highly recommend you make sure you track with Omni CD your party's cooldowns, and if you see your Death Knight using Anti-Magic Shell or Icebound Fortitude, don't Leap of Faith them out. It's only going to trigger them and make them lose DPS. I would also not recommend using Dispersion as a Shadow Priest because, like Cloak of Shadows, is a very powerful defensive that is going to save you in time of need, and I would save it for a boss mechanic or a big trash pull. Evokers are great at dealing with Entangling, especially because they can take 2 charges of hover, which allows them to short dash. And you can also use a target macro like the one you see on the screen here, either specific target or mouse over, in order to Verdant Embrace to one of your party members that is in a safe area. Well, that was it for this week's Affixes. I hope this was valuable. If you know any other tips and tricks that you can share, make sure you leave them in the comment section down below. Share it with everyone so that we can benefit from the wisdom and we can improve. If you need to go back and rewatch a specific part of the guide, video chapters are emphasized at the bottom of the video as well as in the description. And if you want to have a more in-depth look at the macros as well as additional macros that I use, make sure to check out our Patreon page, link also in the description. And if you got value from this video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, check a video that I made that is going to help you decide how to best pick a main character in the new season. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.